Thank you very much for the introduction, and it's great to have so many people here today in person to join us for this panel discussion. It's quite a difficult panel discussion, probably one of the most difficult I've done in the history of G1, because we are going to talk about politics without getting political. So we are going to try and navigate that and talk a little bit about the role that social media or digital media is now playing in the shaping of both political opinion, but more importantly, in global political opinion. There's a concept in communications called proximity of trust. And it says that you tend to trust people more if they are physically or psychologically close to you. And that's true, right? You tend to trust your best friend more than you do your ordinary friends because they're psychologically closer to you. When we're teenagers, we tend to trust our best friends more than we do our parents. And so that proximity of trust is not a new concept. It has been a concept. But in the war going on between Ukraine and Russia, President Zelensky has been incredibly successful in creating what I believe proximity of trust by bringing the trials and tribulations of the Ukrainian people into people's living rooms and into their pockets through their smartphones. And he's created that great sense of trust. So I think if we went outside and asked a lot of people, do you trust Ukraine more? Or do you trust Russia more? Public opinion would probably be overwhelmingly on the side of Ukraine. And so we want to explore some of those issues, techniques, and of course, at the end, come to some proposals as to what Japan could be doing a little bit differently. Because Japan, we have the opening of tourism tomorrow, but we have a lot of criticism about Japan for the closure of its borders. Do people have to wear masks? There's a lot of stuff going on, not only on the political side, but also obviously in term areas of opening to inbound tourism as well. So I'd first of all just like to ask for a show of hands in the audience. Does social media influence global public opinion? Those who think yes, put up your hand, please. Oh, wow, that was more than I thought we'd get. Okay, second question. Do you think that social media is now more influential than traditional media? And when I say traditional media, I mean newspapers, broadcast. Put up your hands if you think that's the case. Oh, wow. Okay, so excellent framing for our discussion today. So on those two questions, Yi, what are your thoughts?
Thank you very much. And first of all, maybe I can give everyone a little bit about my context, right? So I was born in China, and from 7, I grew up in Japan. And now I live in San Francisco. So actually, and working several years in each country about this tree. So maybe I think from that view, and something different. I don't have the identity for only in one place. That's my situation. And so today, so as Ross said, so we don't want to be political, right? So we're just talking about my personal opinion about through my experience, that's my situation, and I don't representative any organization or this type of this. So then, first of all, I think because now I'm in Smart News. Smart News is one type of media, and so now we are leverage many traditional media and many newspapers and to deliver so many different type of content to people. Then my personal opinion, so for why everyone in this room, you think the social media is become more stronger and traditional media is become weaker, is because at this moment, so everyone use social media. It's because social media is made by everyone, right? So everyone can give your opinion to people. And then from that view, people is not check each fact and then post them, right? So you feel something, you feel you have some emotion, and then you want to share your emotion to people. That's social media's power, right? So for the politics or for economics or for this type of genre, maybe. So if we want to deliver some very good content, maybe we need to think more deeply, right? So, but by the way, this is what we are doing so in Smart News. But so actually, so why I think so people feel the traditional media become more weaker, but social media become more stronger is because digital media, the social media binding the emotion and the news, so and separate to the world, that spread to the world. That's the reason. It's my opinion.
Colette,
hello.
yes, hello. Social media and the impact stronger than traditional media seem to be the opinion here.
Yeah.
How do you view that?
Well, I come to this with a background in politics and research interest in the impact of communications technology on politics and society. And I think that social media has created a visible reactive audience, and we really don't know how to respond to that. And there's a paradox in that good politics is actually a long, slow process. It takes a long time to develop policy. It takes a long time to develop it and implement it. It takes a long time for the consequences to be felt and to permeate through a society. Social media is instantaneous, spontaneous, and often not very well considered. And yet people are being influenced in their decision-making by what happens on social media. So we have this conflict between how you manage political decision-making in a complex world and people trying to respond to every single opinion, as Yi says, that emerges in social media in real time. And I think that's the real challenge for leaders in politics and in business, because of course it also influences people's perception of a business, and it can destroy someone's reputation or their brand or their business with completely unfounded information.
Colette, when you say visible reactive audience, can you perhaps dig down a little bit and explain that to us in a little bit more detail?
Well, with traditional media, which was more of a broadcast controlled way of communication, people never really saw the reactions of their audience immediately. When someone read a news story, they didn't go, oh, that's rubbish, and I'm going to tell you what I think about it immediately. Now, as if somebody doesn't like a headline, if they if they think there's a mistake in a story, they will get straight onto it in social media. From spelling mistakes to actual factual errors, they will be corrected. So I talk about 4 things that social media does. One is it's a corrective. So it will correct facts in real time. One, it's directive. It will tell people what to do and where to go. Another thing, it's protective. It will say, no, you can't do that. You know, and we're going to organize against it. And then there's invective, where people just attack each other. So you've got these 4 different strong themes of the way that people use social media that have to be managed because they're all different.
Hey, thank you very much. We'll come back to the management of those a little bit later, because I'm really interested in whether you think people, governments, organizations are doing a good job of managing those 4 different pillars. Takio, the role of social media in influencing global public opinion, your thoughts?
Yeah, so maybe first to myself as well, a little bit context. I'm German, half Japanese. I've only been living here a few years now. And there's a striking difference between East and West often in many ways, but also especially when I saw the hand about opinion shaping, online, offline. There's a discrepancy, I think, among that between especially Japan and somewhere else. Now, I would like to divide between what is an opinion and what is a political view. I believe, and that sounds harsh, but I think Trump did a great deed to politics in a way. He made it, again, something that people talk about, and I mean anyone, because it was really somehow accessible. And when you think about accessibility of information, digesting it, a lot of people, I believe, especially younger people, are not into politics. They like to see outcome. They like to see what makes decision makers do things that influence their decision or their life, but they don't want to be in the middle of decision creation, arguments, or maybe battles between countries about whatever. They just want to see what's in it for them. Okay, then this what's in it for them is really key here. Everybody uses social media for that reason. We don't use it for anything else. We are all very much narcissistic when it comes to social media, especially younger people. They post, I think, more selfies than I've taken in my life in a week. And that is, I will say it's just the dimension and the dynamic today of what social media has created. It's this self-centered narcissistic view. And with that comes the information sharing policy around that. So to what we just heard already, I think when you go on social media, you want to hear and see what you like and nothing else. And especially not politics. And don't bother me with that. That's kind of where I'm heading with my first statement here and what I believe is driving social.
Okay, it reminds me of the fact that I was putting up a lot of pics on social media about my Chihuahua at one time, and my son came to me and said, "Dad, the dog's really not that cute." So in that sense of behavior that you've outlined, Takio, why do you think that President Zelensky has been so successful in using social media to direct public opinion to be sympathetic to the Ukraine?
Yeah, a short story long would be the support network around him, not only the media, but generally speaking. But if you look closer, it's actually his understanding of who needs to be with him. So he has one of the most influential younger vice prime ministers with him, who's now 31, who joined him at age 29. And he, pardon that expression, he gamified the war. He made it accessible to everybody by suddenly opening to cryptocurrencies as a support manner, or to let people in to understand how can they avoid that Russia gets a hold of whatever they want by boycotting, right? So he was very open voiced, and he's still, I think this morning he posted something about that bridge that was bombarded, and it was a floating rocket launcher on the sea, and his only comment was a smiley face. It got a lot of traction. So he gamified the political aspect away, and it's only black and white now. Either you're with the war or you're with peace, and you have to choose. You're not in between. It's not about politics, and the young people understand that. It's very easy, right? You're either a warmonger or you like to be at peace with everything. And the peace aspect he tried to then bring forward, right? To say, Google, Apple, Microsoft, you need to shut it all down, and here's your voice, retweet if you believe in that. He got the retweets, the reach, right? And with that in mind, and this drive of bringing it down to the level of people who are not about politics, he made it suddenly something that they care about. And then we all know that the meme culture, right? He's really good at memes. And I'm not talking about Zelensky himself. This whole operation, it's memes everywhere. In the beginning, I bet all of you saw at least 10 memes a day about the Ukraine war. And it was basically laughing at the whole thing rather than taking it seriously. But still instilling, either you're with that and you accept it, or you're against it and you for peace.
So is what you're saying that if you want to influence political opinion, you need to take the politics out of it and just make it black and white? You agree or you don't agree?
Yes and no. Connorson is not here, he cannot hear me. Politics is very important, of course, and we all know that, but I would like to put one perspective into this that Connorson himself mentioned earlier in his opening speech. He said he needs younger people in the cabinet, he needs younger people's opinion, and I think that's where the disconnect often happens. When you get older, you understand the dynamics of politics and what it needs and how much time it takes, and as Colette mentioned, it's a long, long road. Young people don't want long roads. They want to be successful tomorrow, an influencer with 2 million followers and very famous. And when politics doesn't allow that, then why do I care about politics, right? Politics has no game in their life until later stages when they have their own kids. Then it's especially crucial, right? So it's more about opening up to the younger audience and bringing in the right people to understand how.
Colette, opening up to the younger audience and bringing more people, and I guess making that connection.
Yeah, well, I think
how
it's
important is that?
Well, it's always important to communicate with everyone that you want to influence and that you want to be connected to. But in the case of the Ukraine social media, we have to also remember that it wasn't an overnight success. The Ukraine political situation had been discussed on social media for 8 years. You know, the politics of it had been discussed. There was a strategy by Zelensky's government and also by Russia. But I mean, one of the problems with the Russian social media was, and I think this is where it overlaps with what Takeo is saying, is that it was controlled by the government, whereas the Ukrainian social media was a bit more free. There were people outside of the Ukraine who were creating memes, because in the end, the moral and ethical issue is at the heart of what people are concerned about. And so, and this goes back to the Arab Spring, where social media was very important in organizing people to get out on the streets in Tunisia and then in Egypt. But the long-term consequences of the Arab Spring are often forgotten, and we still see them in Syria today because they spread out across the region. So we also have to have a much more strategic perception of how social media's influence permeates through society once it's unleashed. And also that can also happen with businesses as well. I don't want to just talk about government. It also affects businesses. So yes, you want to have young people involved, but we also have to have an overarching understanding of what happens when we have this dynamic technology overlaid human being behavior, and how long it actually takes people to understand and change their minds about anything.
The impact of technology coming to your area. So the technology is what is enabling all this, right? So do you think that as a society that we have caught up with the technology, that we actually know how to use it in the best way possible, or is the technology just constantly moving ahead of us in terms of the way that opinions are formed?
Thank you very much. Basically, I think, as you know, now every media, I mean, so the social media or the new online media is running by the algorithm, right? But algorithm just algorithm. It's not algorithm make something good or bad, but it's so based on how to use that, right? And now I think all other technology, so the recommendation engine is one type of technology, and then it's in the way to grow. It's not now that algorithm is not the end of the solution. So before that, as you know, so all the approach, so to delivering something is on same platform, right? Talking about YouTube. In YouTube, you can watch all genre, right? Of course, politics, of course, something like manga in Japan, maybe, right? Animation, or this type of entertainment. So the point is actually, so, but come back to the media. If you write some content, you're the journalist. So you write the content in same way to entertainment and politics? No, right? So now I think so we are in the way so to become more better. I mean, in the technology industry, you get looking at me, so it's very tech guy, right? So basically, I think the next step is we need to thinking about how to use technology can serve more better solution. So that's the next step, I think, so as a media company or as a tech company to think. So now many things we use same platform, same algorithm or these type of things, and to think how to scale. That's a scalability is a key word in the 10 years ago, right? But now everyone can feel scalability is enough. So next step is how to make it more adjust to each different type of genre or issues. I think that's maybe next step So what we need to think, and it make humanity and the technology can be combine more better.
And is the fact that we've seen so many technological advances that make content so easily produced. I mean, when I first started out in comms and we wanted to produce content, it would be a truckload of equipment and people, and it would cost a huge amount of money. Now I sort of say, can someone take their iPhone and just go out there and take some shots, or we'll take, and it's very easy. It's almost instantaneous in a sense. So you talked about user-generated content before from professional content. It's now much easier, right?
Yeah, very good question. So basically, I coming from my previous job. It's not Smartest, but previous job is in DNA, one gaming company, mobile gaming company. Maybe I can tell some story about in the gaming company, mobile gaming company. In the very beginning, everyone can make very small game. Maybe you remember the Angry Bird, right? But today, why is the gaming, mobile gaming? It's very, very complicated. The cost become 100 times, maybe 1 billion Japanese yen. So for one very small game, actually. So why it's become bigger is because if the people want to more better things, then the cost will increase. It means, I think this is not only just the mobile gaming, but I think in future, it will happen in all the content type, different type of content. So now maybe everyone think, after 20 years ago. So everyone now in online think news is free, something like that. But I don't think it will remain in longer run. So because if we really want to deliver good content, there will be many costs, right? So from that view, people will be aware of that because now gaming is not free, right? Everyone pay for game. I think so in future trend, as a future trend, one day, I think everyone will think, oh, if we want to get good premium content, it's not only for only the entertainment, but for the news or the journalism. So then they need to pay. So I think so from that view, it will change. And then it means cost will separate it too. Something like very easy to get, free model, maybe ads model or something like you can check what happened as a fact in the Twitter. Maybe it's the fastest way. You find what happened. But if you want to understand why it happened or it affects what, maybe you need to pay for some price to get more deeper and premium content. I think it's just a future.
So are we looking at a future which is sort of like in Japan, everyone loves to read Bunshun, right? And they are so good at doing their research. But we also know that if we really want the high-level premium content, then we should go to NHK or we should go to one of the respectable newspapers. So are you saying that we're going to see that split happening in social media, that there will be the paid for professional content and people will go there, and we will come to a much greater understanding that what we're actually seeing on social media is like the sort of the Bunshun content, and it shouldn't be highly regarded?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe you can, if everyone follow, everyone how to use, user is how to using the social media. Actually, you can find the way to use the user activity totally different. So from compared with 5 years ago or 10 years ago, now the digital natives, maybe the people 20s or teenagers, they are using several different accounts. So to change their identity in the social media. It's similar. So I mean, this is one type of media literacy, right? So of course, I don't think everyone, if you have your child is separate and you don't want to let you to know, maybe you don't think it's a good thing. But basically, I think everyone will change their activity. So in future. So from that view, I think, yeah, I agree with you.
Colette, the future, do you think that we're going to see that disparity begin to emerge?
Well, I think he's talking about something that I've been hearing for probably now for 30 years, and that is how you get people to pay for content and what it is that they're looking for. And one of the problems that we have is we have such a massive quality that people can, we cannot consume the amount of content that there is. What is it that is going to make people pay for it and pay enough to make it worthwhile producing. That is the real problem that ICT has produced for the entire media industry globally. And I think that one of the issues, and this is very relevant, I think, to Japan, is the issue of quality. And, you know, I think Japan has a very strong cultural bias towards quality, and that when people realize that they only have so much time to spend on media and so much money, they can only afford to a certain amount from their income to spend on media, that they will be looking for quality, and it will be the quality sites that have a strong market position. Because even though we talk about social media a lot, one of the facts that people are probably not as aware of is that people are starting to spend less time on social media and to give it less credibility. And so in some ways, the impact of social media may have already peaked. I'm not saying it has, but it may have.
Okay, thanks. Before we pivot to develop this topic further, just like to take a couple of questions from the audience. So maybe 2 questions if anyone has anyone. Okay. Sorry, I didn't warn you. So bad flurry amongst the Mike brothers.
Thank you. Aziz Ben Sultana, full-time MBA and CEO of Global Citizens Translation. One of the things that which are very interesting since 2016 is the algorithms. We all talk about the algorithms and how social media is amplifying our feelings and amplifying and sensationalizing everything. My question is, apart from the fact checkers, which I believe are very popular in Germany, is there any chance the world can create a response to this? Because I think it's amplifying the good to a very extreme way and amplifying the bad to a very extreme way, which is also dangerous.
Yeah, I take this one because essentially I'm the one who creates news, right, with my team, and I'm in the industry of forming opinions, right? And every client, no matter which industry they're from, government, brands, whatever, they have KPIs. And usually KPIs on social are views, engagement, sharing, positive comments. It's just an artificial indicator, right? And with that in mind, all the platforms are trying to tailor to that. The issue with that, tailoring it, means we're giving access to these brands, government included, to artificially inflate the KPIs. And that means paid media. And paid media, unfortunately, is a very strong way of also sharing disinformation, wrong information. I mean, I don't want to go politics, but Philippines, you have seen the election. A lot of the news there that was carrying the election was paid media, and it was actually not factual. Paid by the government or these people who wanted to be in power and are now. So that is the problematic aspect of what we deal with here. I think there must be a fundamental change in what is successful communication and how do we measure it, and what is a positive and negative KPI. And it shouldn't be just an artificial inflatable number. It needs to be something tangible. It needs to be something that maybe you cannot with money change and direct to where you want to be. Because what's a KPI if you can buy it, right? Then you might as well not send the message. So I always say, if you get that because the message is good, then it's really good. But if the message is nonsense and you pay for it, what have you really achieved?
Takeo, you made the point earlier when we were talking that the majority of people that are looking at search on Google really don't distinguish between a paid ad and other types of content.
Yeah, that's right. So the majority of people, I don't know if you're in the same industry as I am, but I can distinguish with a 5-second look at everything, what is paid and what is not, obviously. But if you go to Google, the paid ads are often just as a given clicked on first because they're the foremost to show. And most people, statistically, about 90% do not even distinguish between organic search actual content or paid for content. So this lack of distinguishedness is already the issue, which is, by the way, also maybe a key driver for TikTok becoming a key search engine in the world now. And that's why Google is starting to realize that, because on TikTok, you can not really artificially inflate your search as much. And so the content is real and more, as you said earlier, closer to you, and therefore maybe believable.
Would you like to make a
Ross?
comment?
Ross?
Yes, Colette.
Yeah, I'd
Sounded
just
like my mum.
Yeah. One of the issues that we've never really addressed is that the whole system, the whole digital online system, is based on binary logic. It's very simplistic, and in a way, the whole system reflects that underlying logic. Human beings that are operate more on a fuzzy logic type of system, and the algorithms don't really reflect that. And I think that what Yi is saying is absolutely right. Some of the solution to what we see as communication problems is also an engineering problem and a maths problem of how we can actually calculate or observe or build in spontaneity, unpredictability that actually it more accurately reflects the way that human beings behave.
Interesting point. I think at Smart News, you actually, I know someone once told me in the States, you actually reverse the algorithm so that people are deliberately getting stuff that doesn't fit with their algorithm?
Maybe yes. Now, actually, so in future, what we want to do is a secret. Maybe we want to solve the issue, but basically now what we are doing for that is, if you find our Smart News US version, you can find we call political slider. I mean, so it's more like the balance. Or I mean, if once you click some article. But as you know, in United States, maybe the article is something on the left side or right side or something, right? And then we will show you about what is the left side, what about what same fact, about same news. So why is the left side? Why is the right side? What type of article is in the middle? So we will show you the full picture. I mean, go one level step back. And so before you read the article, you can check the entire picture about the fact or about the news. So it's one type of solution. It's not only solution, but it's one type of solution.
Interesting. One more question at this stage. Anyone? Okay.
Thank you. Actually, I will just react to what you just said. And how can a fact be political? Isn't a fact a fact? So, I mean, my question is, how do you, I will be interested, and maybe there is only so much you can share. And it's also a question for the panel, but how do you contextualize a fact, which I guess is how you create your slider? Is it by whom is the writer or the news outlet that is putting the fact out, or the debate around the fact? Because, for example, climate change, or, you know, there are facts and then there are debates, but a fact should be a fact, shouldn't it?
Thank you very much. Actually, it's very, very difficult question in this world now. And now we are challenged in many different type of place to use different type of way to do that. And something like, so if let's say if we want to check the how many people be infected so to the COVID, let's say, so then the number come from where? Maybe it's a most important point. Of course, we cannot know. So people did not to report to the CDC or this type of place, but yeah, maybe that's a one type of things. And maybe, as you said, I cannot just talk everyone about the really how to work it is, but I can suggest something like so the writer, maybe it's one way. Actually, so for each different type of content, so then we think maybe we need to use many different type of method to think. It's not 100% fact, but how to let people can really understand more fact-like content, something like that.
Ross?
Yes, it's my mom again.
Sit down. The question is really a fundamental one for the times that we live in. How do we actually distinguish facts from emotion and opinion? And this is what I meant by the problem between linear logic and fuzzy logic. So, and if I could simplify it to one thing, like we have are you a glass half full or a glass empty person? There is exactly the same amount of water or in the glass, but human beings bring to it their perception of the world, what values they bring. And so it's the interpretation of data. So a few years ago, everyone was very excited about how much data people would have access to and how we'd be able to make more accurate decisions about everything. But very quickly, it's become apparent that data is just as open to manipulation as opinion. What you choose to present, what you choose to leave out, how you portray it, even all of the things that we know about communication affect how we understand data. So it is, I think, probably one of the most important questions we have to grapple with.
That's very interesting. Well, when we were speaking before, I asked the question, does anyone have some examples of other countries that have done a really good job in raising a political issue or raising the global profile of a particular issue? And you mentioned some countries. Would you like to talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, I think the Pacific Islands have been able to use social media very effectively, and that's partly because they didn't have a very big global media footprint with traditional media. You know, their radio was even hard to access amongst the islands itself. But social media made the Pacific Islands more visible, and they have been showing leadership on the issue of climate change. And while their initial influence might have been small, it's spread out and it's been very impactful. I guess another recent one is, and that's ongoing, is that what we're seeing in Iran at the moment with, and this comes back to Kayo's point about young people taking and using social media to push back against the authoritarian government of Iran, all sparked by one single event. And that is the unpredictability of social media.
I would like to actually address the question again on facts. I'm German. I love facts. And probably most people in the room. But Asia, I've learned, doesn't take it so sincerely with facts, right? There's still superstition. There's belief in ghosts in some Southeast Asian countries. You would never get that out of their heads. And then we can go into religion, right? So, but facts are a very stretchable word. It's only what you believe that makes the fact. If you don't believe in something, you can be, exposed to a fact as often as you want. You will not believe it. Belief makes your opinion, right? And for that matter, in social, we've seen this countless times when something gets overshared, and the story, when you read it as somebody who likes facts, you will question the the ingredients of the story. You will be like, that doesn't sound right. And then you do 5 seconds research on Google, less probably, and it says first letter, right? This is not right. So, but this aspect of searching for facts, uncovering and making sure that things you hear are real, that's something that we need to bring back to society, I think. We've seen this in social media. They started to flag things, no? And somebody very important got banned from Twitter, if you remember, because he didn't take it so factual, what he shared. But he was still heard and believed, and he's still doing it on his own platform. So really, platforms and facts, they don't really match. That doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. Facts are what you make of it.
So in Japan, we have a population of 120 million people, all very highly educated. Generally, even though the population is aging, generally tech savvy, I would say. We also have a lot of companies. I know Shikata-san over there and his colleagues are doing a really great effort at trying to get the positive news out about Japan, but it doesn't seem to be working. We often see quite a lot of misperceptions, misunderstandings, confusion. I mean, when I look at the whole social media dialogue around the opening of tourism tomorrow, I'm sorry to the people involved, but it's a little bit of a disaster. People really don't know what's going to happen. There's been no setup for it. So why isn't it working? Is the first question. And if it's so hard to do, then why should we bother, trying to do it well? Because it does take a lot of time, money, and resources. Is there a need for it? Taki, I'm going to throw that to you first.
Okay, so I think, first of all, I will tell everybody, if you're not online, you don't exist. It's true by now, right? Back in the days, who bothered? Nobody. But today, if you don't have a presence, even if it's just a LinkedIn profile with your face on it, even if there's not your whole CV, right? I put probably only a third of my CV on LinkedIn. I don't need to share that to the whole world, but if I'm not on LinkedIn, I don't exist. Same goes for governments and all of what they do and what they intend to do. If they don't communicate, if they don't exist, then people forget them. Yeah, and when you are forgotten and you try to then eventually, for something really important, want to be heard, that's a bit late. So what I will always say is you need to keep your audience growing, you need to keep it engaged, and you need to start assessing a huge group of people that is your voice. And yes, the communication around the opening was maybe not on par with many other places, but in general, right? The Corona communication in Japan wasn't exactly very open. It was quite closed, and it was only when very key aspects were decided already at the very, very late stage, then it was communicated. So that is a different communications policy, I will say, and it doesn't essentially fit social. Social is all about oversharing, actually. And that's why Zelensky and many politicians who do that are quite visible and quite influential. And I will say it with some, caution, but Elon Musk is a good example of that. He is oversharing and too open, and somewhere in between is good.
So do you think that we need a specific agency or department that is staffed with young people that are producing the content that around the strategy that Japan needs to get out?
Yeah, I think what is needed is simply that people stop being so afraid. There is so much I will say holding back because they're afraid of saying something wrong and then getting smashed for it. That's normal today. You get smashed even if you say the right thing. So if you get smashed for saying something that people don't like, or you made a mistake, so be it. Because after 5 minutes, the world has forgotten what you tweeted. What did Elon Musk say 2 weeks ago, right?
Yeah,
Nobody cared.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's what I mean about this. You have to understand social media as reactive. Like it can blow up one day and then the next day something else comes along. But in relation to Japan, I think one of the problems that Japanese enterprises have to confront is that they have been overshadowed and marginalized by a lack of a global media presence, and they've been pushed aside by other rising countries in the region and globally. And that's because, and when you introduce this question, Ross, you basically explained the eternal problem of communication. You have to invest in it. You have to put resources into it. It can't be the last thing in your budget line that you decide to give attention to, and it has to be continuous. And so Japan was a leader in the region for many decades, and now it still has leadership roles, and I understand why the G1 summit is so important, because outside of Japan, you don't see that, you don't hear about it. And but I have some good news. A really good example of a Japanese organization using social media well is the Bureau of the Environment in Tokyo, that has a good social media presence in both English and Japanese, so that you can follow it and you can share its information widely. So I think that Japan has to have its own style and its own approach, and that would make it interesting, and that would make it topical as well. 120 million people who love technology are at your disposal to do that.
It reminds me of a story about, I won't mention the company name, but this company had invested huge amounts of money, millions of dollars, in maintaining a call center for their global customers in India. And this cost them millions of dollars every year. But all their customers were communicating with them on Twitter. And the people that were responsible for looking after Twitter were two interns who had absolutely no ability to say anything to these complaints coming from clients, but I'm sorry. And so it created a global impression that this company was always apologizing. And they finally realized this and, of course, reversed the investments and closed down India and spent more money on that. So there's a catch-up issue that we've, that the government needs to sort of, or companies need to get rid of the fear and do that catch-up and make that pivot to communicating on social media. But Colette, from what you're saying, it's also a content issue. How do you get a strategy around that content that you want to be putting out to make sure that it is compelling, unique, interesting, additive, and all those things that we desire from content? Okay, I'd now like to turn to questions from the audience. And Shikata-san, you put your hand up and you get the right to reply.
So may I come up with my comments? Yeah. I guess one thing is we need to discuss how media is related to democracy, and my view is that the democratic countries face common challenges in terms of managing freedom of expression and new media rising. And in this respect, I think Japan is not unique. US or European countries are facing similar challenges. So we need to discuss how we could make our democracy sustainable under the rise of social media. Number two is there was a discussion about the uniqueness of Japanese landscape, and I think there is cultural elements. Could Japanese CEOs go like Elon Musk? I doubt it. And can Japanese governments go like that? Like, of course, under contingencies, we may need to go wild, but under the normal circumstances, we need to come up with a serious PR, sophisticated public affairs. And number three is just my observation about Japanese Twitter. I'm curious, what maybe this is my question. When I follow political stories of Japanese Twitter, they tend to be very divisive. And it doesn't really reflect public opinion polls, surveys. And I'm, wondering whether this is true in the US or European landscape, and maybe, what Smart News is trying to do in terms of entering American markets could possibly contribute to reducing divisions in American democracies. And I'm curious, what's your views on this?
Okay, Smart News.
First of all, so I think that each the social media or each media, I think so in each country, something from the user side, something different. I mean, the usage of our Twitter in Japan and the usage of our Twitter in the United States, I think it's more like in United States, Twitter and Reddit is separated. But in Japan, so Twitter is used something like the Reddit in United States, and of course other media like the Facebook is used like the LinkedIn or something. So right. So I think so from that view, I think I to be different. So because of the user usage, and so maybe it's similar. So in Smart, so we are using so very how to say same technology or same product, but we are use some different type of strategy. So to jump into the market. Yeah, so like as I said, so the political balancing slider or this type of thing. So in United States, but it's not in Japan or this type of strategy. So yeah, basically I think so how to use technology to to help our democracy. I think it's very, very key. But today, so for the media company, but I think the approach itself should not to be very same. So in different type of country, I think that's my personal opinion.
Colette, is Twitter a noisy minority, or is it reflective of broader public opinion and the point between the disparity between?
Yeah, I think it reflects human society, but one way of looking at it is, firstly, I think the person who just asked the question is right. All political debates tend to be divisive on social media. And I think that's because the people who engage in them are, one, they are combative. You know, they like to have the debate, and the majority of people are standers by. And so we have, but that doesn't mean they don't influence other people. And that is the issue. Who is influencing a lot of the people who are just reading the posts, not necessarily commenting on them? And the intensity of the discussion can tell you something about your audience and how divided it is, but it doesn't tell you everything about the audience. And I think this is where professional communicators need to be doing a lot more backgrounding and understanding of the audience, which I think is what Takeo does.
Interesting. Question.
Thank you very much. My name is Maya Matsuoka, an MBA student, and I have actually two questions. But the first one is, we know that the majority of people do not interact with what is on social media. They only read the posts, and they still get influenced by them, but still they don't react. They don't show their opinion. My question is, of course, countries like Japan are probably more prone to this, and the Japanese society, we know that there is this trend here that people tend to keep quiet and silent. They still consume content. So how can social media, in fact, overcome the threat to democracy? Because first of all, we can see that not everybody comments and not everybody interacts. This is the first thing. And people tend to actually not share their opinion. And here we come to the point of freedom of speech, that obviously, because a lot of people are also afraid of being bashed online, is there a way we can overcome this with social media and actually promote the democratic values? One of them, and probably one of the most important one, freedom of speech.
Colette, I'm going to ask you to comment on that.
Well, I think the whole issue of freedom of speech isn't just confined to social media. It's always been around, but it's amplified it. That because people can see it, which brings me back to where I started. What you can see is the visible audience, the visible reactive audience. personally, I'm completely anti-censorship, because I think that you can only have freedom of speech when everything is out in the open. What we need is more critical awareness, and again, understand proper data collection of who's looking at what, and then perhaps what they tend to do, and where they go next, who they follow. Much more analysis of how your audience behaves. Just because you see something doesn't mean it's going to change your view on something, because I think in the end, your values and beliefs are stronger than all of the media that you're exposed to. And entrenching solid values and beliefs about democracy in the more traditional ways, through education and through the way that democracy is enacted in everyday life, is probably much more important than social media.
I just want to pick up on what she started with, the silent majority. The silent majority exists everywhere, and they are the trust divide between the educated and the less educated and so on. The biggest problem with social media, as you said, they read it, but they don't react. And I think that's the same with going to vote or not. You have a voice, use it. I think what social media needs to start doing in some way or another is to encourage those who are silent now to at least leave some remark. Either no, yes, good, bad, whatever it is, a reaction. And it shouldn't be an emotional reaction. It can be about facts, can be about driving that. It needs to be about the end user to make a choice if they want to have a democracy reflected online on their platform or not. The platform can encourage that, hopefully. But if that change doesn't happen, we will always have to understand that these platforms are an amplifier for minorities, essentially, because they feel at home sharing that and pushing it out there. And I think this notion of sharing and caring about your opinion more than others, I think that's something we need to start getting people to do proactively.
My gut feeling is that people see something on social media and they may not make a comment on social media, but they may talk about it with their family or their friends. And so you're still getting that amplification. It's just not on the technological platform.
Yeah, the visibility is basically zero. Yes.
So that brings us to the end of our time. We have 47 seconds left, which is brilliant timing. So thank you everyone for your participation, and please thank my guests.
Thank you very much. Please join me in giving a big round of applause to the panelists and the moderator.